Hello, everybody, and welcome to Gemini Rising. I am thrilled to be here, as always, with my co-host, Anne. And joining us today is medium Mary Elizabeth. She is a transformational speaker, an intuitive coach, and an author. And I could keep talking, but I would rather hear from Mary Elizabeth about everything that she does and all of her gifts. So welcome, Mary Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be chatting with you ladies. As we begin, hello, hello, hello. One of the things that I do is I channel the divine source that I call we, God, if you please. The energy is here and present and wanting to speak. So please understand that the majority of this conversation will be we, that we are integrated in our energy. So the only way you'll notice the difference is their incarnation, and the way they speak is a little different than mine. We are here, we are here, we are here, and we thank you, we thank you, we thank you. We look forward to the moments that we can share and to answer your questions and to bring clarity and vision for those who are watching.
Thank you. And I wonder if we could learn a little bit more about who we is, and then also when it was that Mary Elizabeth, when you first began to get to know we.
Okay. We are the oneness of all things. We are source. We are God. We are the presence that is within each of you, your inner self, not your higher self, your inner self, that God spark that is born within each and every human being. So as we speak to you, we connect to that. And our Mary Elizabeth is the mirror of you as she speaks to you. So understand that in this moment in time, all is in divine timing. All is in the presence of your energy. And we look forward to seeing you. We have been with our ME since her prior to her birth. She is unique in what she does because she was created uniquely to become one with us. To be again at this space and time, she is approaching the becoming. And what the becoming is a transition. There will be a death, a transition, and a rebirth. And in those moments, at that time, she will be the full embodiment of our energy. And we are here because humanity is on a threshold. And you each are contributing beautifully to uplifting and holding a sense of community. And that is why we are here, to remind you all, you are not alone. You have nothing to fear. I have had my gifts my whole life. From my earliest memories are being in the crib and watching angels in the room and people nobody else in the room seemed to be interacting with. Found out years later that it was my dead grandmother who I had never met and various other people that had come through. I grew up being told, don't tell people, don't share, don't let anybody know what you do. They'll think you're crazy. So basically at a very young age, I learned I was broken. I learned there was something wrong with me. So I tried to hide the gifts that came through. And then in 2012, my estranged husband passed away. And with his passing, I always say all hell broke loose. And basically what happened is all heaven and spirit and angelic, alien-esque, and multiple realms of energy came crashing through. And I really did believe, finally, my mother was right. I was nuts. I had to be because what I was seeing was way beyond anything I had experienced. And through that process, within a week of that introduction, I was asked to go to a mountaintop to speak to God. So I did. And in that process, I was told why I'm here. and reminded of a dream that I had, what I thought was a dream when I was 3, where God came and spoke to me and told me what I was born to do and why I was here, and that when the world was ready, I would step into this role. So I have, as we always says, have come along kicking and screaming over the last 13 years. And sorry, the dogs. And the process has been very unique and very difficult for me, because simply they are expanding the frequency within my body. So it's physically depleting, it's emotionally exhausting. And I used to be an extremely social person, but now I can't be around people too much because it hurts my physicality. Because all energy moves through me. I am not a channel, I'm a portal. So there is no shutting it down. It's just, hey, here we go.
Wow.
You said something which was really interesting to me, because Anne and I have been talking to somebody who is going to come back on the show. He has been on the show before, but we don't have dates locked in yet, for a conversation specifically about the new generation of light workers. Because what I've realized is, and I'm very curious as to your thoughts on this, both Mary Elizabeth and the we every light worker that we have had on this show talks about their journey, and I would say 99% of them had a rough time when they were younger. And even if it doesn't mean an abusive situation growing up, but you've got to hide your gifts, it's ungodly, it's something from the devil, it's something that should be forgotten about rather than embraced. And from what I've seen, this new generation that is coming through now are being born to other light workers, and who are being guided and shown the way at a very, very early age. And my interpretation of that is that they are going to go on and do things and move the needle in such a way that we could only ever hope or dream about doing. And I'm curious as to your thoughts about that theory, if you agree, disagree.
We do have a generation that has come through, and it is a generation that is connected on a level that the majority of those that we consider light workers currently have never experienced, have not been allowed to expand into. For those whose children are, because all children are connected, all children come to this earth with all knowledge of all things. As I said, I had my first experience was at the age of 3, where I was told that I was here to speak and I was here to be the presence of God for the world to see. When I told my parents, that was a thing. But now people are embracing the truth of their children. And the difference was, we grew up, it was very important what other people thought about us. Very important. And our society is still there. Do you look right? Do you sound right? Do you speak properly? Do you fit in? We all want to fit in. But the reality is, those that are being born need to be encouraged. Those that are here as divine messengers need to be exposed to circumstances where the people around them encourage them. Because there are many, and you'll see it often on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, where the youth are speaking, and they're speaking divinely about what is coming and what is here and the reality. But then they are exposed to others who then suddenly bully and tell them why they are wrong. So it's really our job in our generation to teach about our commonality. And our greatest commonality is that we are all different. and this next generation, for them to thrive, they need to be given encouragement, support, but more importantly, be allowed to be different. Because each of you are here, you see, because you too were born to speak. Do you understand that? You were born to tell the stories. You were born to inspire. You were born to, and we're going to use you, you were born to create a space of what has been and weave that together with what is now and what will be. Because all that is important is this moment in time. And as long as you allow yourselves to see that you are not separate, you are not better than, you are equal to the person next to you, that is where the light will be.
Wonderful. I had to get out of here for a minute because I'd forgotten to plug in the power cable. So thank you or please excuse my absence, I guess I should say. But since you had brought up, that my particular thing is to be here to bring the past together with the present so that we can learn from that, I wanted to share something from when I had a reading with you about a month ago or so, and maybe more than that. During the reading, the funniest thing happened, and I wanted to share it and then ask you about what happened to see if we can all learn something about how the divine does speak to us. But in that reading, we were talking about some of the projects that I'm working on. And one of the things in particular is working on a queen, and her name is Queen Caroline of Ansbach. She was married to King George II. And I think that you had been talking about me writing a book about this, myself, AE, writing a book about this. And just as that message was coming through, this band that was at the venue started to play Sweet Caroline, which is the name of the queen that I'd be writing about. And I think that, we continued on, and actually, no, later in the evening, this is the part you wouldn't have known, is that I was talking to my mom about the reading. And I think this band had a limited repertoire, because just as I was talking to her about, and then when I was talking about Queen Caroline, the band started to play Sweet Caroline, the band started to play the song again. So I just think it's so interesting that those kinds of divine messages are probably playing around all of us all the time. For me, in that moment, it really hit me over the head because I was in the midst of having a reading with you. But I wondered if you could say a little bit about the kinds of divine messages that we all get all the time.
That's the key right there. The universe is speaking to you all the time. There is no coincidence. With that coming through, that was a reinforcement, because in that conversation, from what I remembered, they were telling you this is exactly the path you're supposed to take. And you were going, well, I'm thinking about, and that came through as reinforcement for you. And we all have a tendency when a message comes through to see it in the moment and then forget it. Does that make sense? Because we explain to ourselves why it can't be real, why we're misinterpreting, what is off kilter in what we believe. And again, the universe reinforced for you as the day went through. And it had nothing to do with the limited ability of the band. It was literally there to remind you that this is where you're meant to be. This is the path you're supposed to do. And if you remember, I also told you something about a script. There's a reason for that. So the fact that they're showing me the reading right now, because 98% of the time I don't remember what I say to anybody. So because We is in the moment, but you need to hear that again today. This is the path you're meant to take. This is the story you're meant to tell. This is the space that creates that power that women need to be empowered at this time. Because right now, if you look around the world, we love men, we really do. But they react from a different space of commonality. They react more from supremacy, not all, but majority. And what is needed to heal this earth is the divine feminine to lead, to understand the aspects of all human beings, that commonality, which is our difference, but also what makes us the same. And the universe will talk to you in all things, whether you've all heard the examples used. You're thinking of buying a car and suddenly you're on the freeway and there's 27 of them on your way home. I always count. The music that comes through, the thought you wake up with, the person who calls and says something that triggers a memory of something you put aside. Because again, a lot of times when we think we know what we want to do and it doesn't fall into place immediately, we put it aside and we sometimes forget. So in that divine timing, it may not have been perfect then, but if it's coming back through, pay attention. It's in things you read, it's in the music you hear, it's in the words around you, it's in the clouds. I mean, he's constantly looking at the clouds for direction because the clouds paint for you. That is a dimensional energy. So pay attention to the clouds and what they bring through. Understand that in all things, the universe is continuously communicating with you.
I have a question about signs from the universe. When I was younger, when I saw coins on the ground, I always dismissed it, or I saw it and just went, oh, there's coins on the ground, and I would never bend over to pick them up because I just went, I don't need loose change that I find on the ground. And then I was reading a book one day and a woman talked about feathers and coins being a very common sign that so many people see, but most people dismiss. And in reading this, she said, what you should do is thank the universe for the sign and acknowledge that you've heard it or seen it, if in the case of feathers, or if there's coins, pick them up because the universe takes note that you're paying attention. And so from that moment on, I always pick up the coins. And something very interesting for me, I walk a lot. It's how I clear my head. It's how I fix a bad day. It's what sort of feeds my soul in a sense. And there are a lot of conversations with the universe when I am walking. It's when I ask all the questions, am I making the right decisions? And the really interesting thing is the moment I started acknowledging those signs and picking them up, I noticed there would be days where I would ask a question and I wouldn't just see a single coin. I would see a trail of them, almost as if they were breadcrumbs, like was it Hansel and Gretel that left the crumbs so that they could find their way back home? One time I found an entire pile of coins. I don't even know how much money it was. How important do you think it is to not only see the signs, but to acknowledge them?
We should always acknowledge. Always. Gratitude increases the energy. So when you see something, just think of the phrase, what you focus on multiplies. What you focus on multiplies. I see coins everywhere. I used to pick them up, pennies, and then my dad died and he leaves me dimes. So I'm like, yeah, pennies, okay. But I still acknowledge the fact that I'm being spoken to. So I say, thank you for the penny. Leave it for someone who needs it. I appreciate you. And it happened just the other day at the gas station. I went, okay, I see the penny. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Let's leave it for the next person who needs it. And the energy of that creates a momentum to receive more. Anytime you acknowledge, you receive more. You mentioned coins, and I have a story from when these gifts first started expanding. I was at a restaurant and with a friend, and we went in, and we'd never been there. And we went to pay, and they wouldn't take our card. They were like, we don't take cards, we only take money. We only take cash. We didn't have enough cash. And I'm like, well, let's see if I have any coins in my purse. I had $1.25. We needed $7 and some cents. And she didn't have any. I had $1.25. And I just said, okay, Dad, I need your help. And I kept reaching back into my purse and finding more and more coins. $8 worth of coins, because he didn't want to leave me without anything.
Oh, that's so
and we
funny.
were just both going, this can't be happening. How is this happening?
Because sounds like a Mary Poppins bag.
I know, right? I'm like, no, if we could only do that with $100 bills, I'd be happy. But exactly. It was in that moment, there was such a need, and I was asking the universe to help me, you know? And I heard my dad say, I got you. And it was, and the majority of that was in dimes. As I said, my dad leaves me dimes. So it's just, once we acknowledge whatever the universe brings, and here's the important part, good, bad, or ugly, doesn't matter. Acknowledge it. Thank you. We understand this is here for a reason. So every day, if you can come from gratitude, you will shift your energy. And shifting your energy is key to shifting your life.
I do need to share one tiny thing. So my mum always loved birds and bird watching, all of that. And owls are her sign to us that she's around. And from the moment she passed, owls would fly in front of my face and land on fences when I'm walking, and an owl would fly up and just land. And it bothered my sisters. And I said, do you understand? She's doing it to me because I'm receptive to what is coming through. And that's all it is. And you are all the first people that I call. So the message isn't necessarily for me. It's for whoever needs to hear it. I'm just the messenger. When I moved over here and I had a dog for a number of years, we would go walking, and we would go walking at nighttime. And same thing with the coins. I would ask a question of the universe, or I would ask a question for a sign that everything was going to be okay, or I was making the right decision. And an owl would fly in and just land very close by. And then something else started happening, which I called the meeting of the owls. And I had background cancellation on my headphones so that when I was walking and talking to people, they weren't disturbed by the road noise and the sirens and everything else. And I said to my sister, I am surrounded by owls. I can't hear them, but they're all speaking to each other. It's why I call it the meeting of the owls. And I said, I'm going to be quiet. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it because of the settings. And she said, okay. And I went silent, and I heard her gasp because she could hear the meeting that was going on. It was about 10 of them all speaking to each other. I would tell my neighbors, I've lived in this building for almost 8 years, and they said a lot of them are California natives. And they just say, we have never seen an owl in all the years that we've lived here, and we've been here since we're born. And you come back from every second walk saying, oh, I saw 3 owls. I heard 10 of them. This happened, that happened. And I went, it's my mum. It's a sign. And so I'm very, very grateful. But it absolutely does happen when you acknowledge it, and it becomes more and more frequent and more apparent.
I can tell you right now, as you speak, initially it was your mother coming through, but your spirit animal is the owl, and they will guide you with their wisdom, and they will bring you to the next phase over the next 16 to 18 weeks. Pay attention to what it is you are feeling when they come through, what you are thinking about in the moment they appear, because they're like the punctuation mark on your thought. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm curious about, since we've been talking about the memories left by people, you know, our long departed dead ones, the people we loved. I'm curious about this whole idea that we come in soul groups, and I'd like to know what you think more about that, or to sort of tell us your view of how we're all connected. Because I'm just thinking that, you know, we do really think about the people that we've known who've gone before, that are no longer here. You know, we have these messages from them, but more than that, you know, I always wonder, when we get to the other side ourselves, are they going to be standing there going, that was fun, you got to do this time, and I did this last time. Do we all catch up with what our roles were? I'm curious always about the other side.
Okay, let us jump in here, because this is one of the things we'd like you to understand. First, in regards to soul group, you have all heard the expression soulmate. You are all soulmates. Anyone who is alive in this moment in time, or you are on this planet, you are on a soul journey together. So you don't have one soulmate. You don't have a family of soulmates. You have 1 billion plus soulmates that are here with you in this moment in time. You are all here divinely given in this time. Do you have a group that interact, how should we say, and what we will say in that regard? You've heard of twin flame, have you not?
Yes.
And that energy, your twin flame, is simply an energy that has split and become two. A soul that has split for this part of your journey. So you're literally entwined as a flame would be, walking separately. But for those, when you pass, what Ami will share is the connection she sees when those who come through to speak show her their passing. And in the moment of your last breath, so before your breath cease, all those you have loved, you will see. All those you have connected with on a heart level will be present with you to take you from this phase to the next. And there is joy, and there is understanding, and then you come together in the oneness of the energy. You are not, as Emmy's dad used to say, you'll find me on a golf course when you pass away. That is not true. He's here with her and her sisters and her daughter and all those he's loved throughout his lifetime, energetically in your energy field. But in the moment of your passing, in the moment of your last breath, you reconnect completely. The communication, it's not as if many people will ask, are mom and dad together? Technically, yes, they are. But depending on where their soul, individualized soul frequency lies, they are together in the oneness. But if one is at a frequency here and the other is at a frequency here, it's not like they're strolling hand in hand, but they are in the awareness of all things. And the awareness of all things is beyond the comprehension of a human being. You still think of those who leave as if they are in the constraints of your physical body. What we mean by that is the way your mind thinks, the way you connect to others. You are expanded to pure love and light, and there is nothing but joy and happiness and absolute understanding, absolute clarity, which allows you to let go of all resentment, let go of all judgment, let go of all guilt, let go of anything that hindered you, or any issues that may have caused you fear here in this earthly plane. They all release. There is nothing but love and light, pure joy, and expansion in your energy. And that is the transition into the next phase of living, because you are still all alive. Your energy never dies.
What are your thoughts, or what do you know, I should phrase that better, about the thought that when people reincarnate to speak to a medium or somebody that can connect to the other side and deliver messages, that part of the soul is still contactable in that regard? So I'm wondering how I can word this without saying too much. I have been told recently that my mother is getting ready to come back, and I am concerned as to how she's coming back or who she's coming back to, but that's a separate conversation. But if she reincarnates, hypothetically, if myself or my sister were to go to get a reading, if she's reincarnated, does all communication with her soul stop because she's back here on earth, or is there a fragment of her soul that stays on the other side and able to keep that communication open?
Okay. First of all, let us just say, during your lifetime, your mother will not reincarnate here.
Okay.
Okay. But will she and you, will all of you reincarnate? Yes, because you still have more adjustment in your frequency before you can ascend into the oneness of all things. So you will all go through that process again. But the space of energy, very, 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 very rarely does one come through while their family is still here. Come back through. The energy that connects with the medium, that speaks through, that is the energy field, which, if you think about it, you are a soul, you have a body, but the energy that is emanated is your energy field, which emanates from that inner space within you, that God spark. It's a little different than what most people believe. Your higher self is your soul. Your inner self is your God spark. And that is the energy field that forever stays on this earthly plane. So interestingly enough, if you were to come back in human form again, your energy is still here from your previous existence. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, that's really fascinating.
They never said that before. So
I think that's really fascinating as someone who spends a lot of time writing history and researching history, because of course the people I'm looking at have been long gone for, over 200 years, if not more. And it's interesting to think about that while we're here, we're creating an energy that outlives us.
Yes. It's this space of, well, actually, if you think of it this way, you've all seen vortexes, correct? You know, the depiction of the vortexes, and think of it in color. So you have different vibrational frequencies. If you think of your God spark, which is God within you, which is the creator living life as Anne and Natalie and RME, in that space, that energy is projected outward, never dies. It's just a level of frequency that will currently always remain within that vortex of energy, because vortexes do not disappear, they just grow. Does that make sense to say? But the soul is the higher self, which, just so you know, it's higher self, inner self. Inner self is a different terminology that we are bringing through so people understand that we are connecting to their God experience, not their soul's experience. The soul, if you think of a, what should we say, a pixelated picture, and you look at the whole, that is the representation of source, the representation of God, so to speak. Each individual pixel is the soul experience, but the energy that is you, that stays in this realm, is the projection of God from you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. So, what if we're talking about a group of people who, so I guess I'm thinking of having been at Civil War battlefields, for example, where you have a group of people that have this intense experience all at the same time, actually, two groups of people against each other, right? So, in those sorts of situations, all those fragments of the inner self of the people experiencing that moment does it leave a residue in the areas where such profound, intense things happened?
Okay. We're going to, what you're talking about are two different things. There is
Okay.
the anger, the fear that they feel leaves an energy signature. And what a lot of people call shadow people or entities, there's an entity here. That's an energy signature that is born from fear. It's usually anger. It's usually insecurity. But it leaves that residue, so it's always in the room. For the collective who come together in a catastrophe, the Civil War, for the example, was an energetic rebalancing of humanity because it had gotten to that space of an extreme at that time where the idea of supremacy, I am better than, I am more than another who is different than me, had tipped to an extreme, which is exactly where you are finding yourselves again. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
So that, are they there? Is that energy there? Yes, there's a combination of both. There's the energy signature of fear. Unless it is cleared, it will not dissipate. But there is also the God spark energy that lives through to help humanity. Everything that is created is to help humanity. So it never leaves. Did that answer your question, my dear?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm curious, how familiar are you with Dolores Cannon's work, and do you agree with it? Do you disagree with how she presents?
In
How we
which
move,
regard? She has a few different.
yeah, how we move through the other side. So I'm talking about reincarnation and the energy that is left here on earth. I'm specifically thinking about the client that she did the hypnosis with that went back and described what's the word? Oh, like the needlework. Oh my goodness, I had the word a second ago. But like a needlepoint sort of tapestry is the word that I'm looking for. And it had these golden threads, and the tapestry, each thread represents a lifetime. And then you go back and you can look at all of that. Is that a fair representation of what it's like when we transition and we're figuring out what we're doing in this next life and how many lessons we've learned and how much our soul has evolved in the previous life and how we move through to the next one?
in regards to the tapestry, let us tap into that for a moment. What we refer to as the tapestry is not an individualized work. It's the tapestry of humanity. And how you treat each other and where you come from is what wears the tapestry. But the threads that run through are individualized in a soul experience. But one of the things we will say is we do not focus on who you've been, because the moment you're born, you have all that knowledge within you. You're born with the absolute knowing of all things. It's how you teach your children to be different, how you teach your children not to allow that information through. And me always uses the example of her child, so we will let her speak. When my daughter was 3, she did this. She loved Mary Poppins. Literally that year, I saw the movie 100+ times. So she knew every word. And one day I came home from work and there were 2 couches and she had taken all the cushions and she had built a chimney. And she was jumping from couch to cushions. And I said, Caitlin, stop. You're going to hurt yourself. And she turned around, put her hands on her hips like Wonder Woman and said, no, Mommy, I can do everything. I'm powerful. And I never spoke to her that way. And it was that knowing when our children are that age, if we encourage that, we change all of humanity. And in that space of past lives, though they were part of who you have become in your soul's journey, you are not here to live your soul's journey. You are here to experience the human experience. The soul, some of you, RME, this is her 3rd incarnation. It will be her last. And others, such as the 2 of you, we have 727, Natalie. And Anne, you are at the space of, interesting. You are at the space of 73. And the reason we say that 73 is significant. So pay attention to that number. Okay, when it comes up in front of you, pay attention to that number and what it brings through. But as you are going through your soul's journey, some have 1. And it's simply because that is who your soul was created to be. And that it ascends into the oneness and no longer needs to expand energetically. But with each carnation, that is what you are doing. You're expanding energetically. To remember who you were, do you know how many Cleopatras are out there? Think about that. How many people have been Cleopatra in their lifetime? Or in their soul's journey? The important aspect is, what are you here for now? That is the question you should ask. The space of a lot of people will do past life regression to heal what they brought through. If you're bringing energy through, it's to help humanity, not to be healed from you. Do you understand? What you need to heal is the scars from here. And what you need to do is own your power. A lot will say they carry generational scars. And you do. But here's the funny thing. All you have to do is choose to let it go. Does that make sense?
But it's so difficult to let it go. You know, this is one of the things that, yeah, I mean, that's the work that we were doing with Christopher that Natalie mentioned earlier. Was that before we went live or
Yeah.
while we were live? And he works with that generational trauma, but also the trauma that you've stored from this life in your body and helps release that. Because it's almost that it's inborn in us, I think, in our bodies to hold on to things, to have certain responses, I guess, because we're human. And if we perceive something as a threat, we're going to hold on to it in particular ways, right?
Let us address that just a little differently. Generational trauma. What if it's taught, not remembered? What if it's taught? One of the things Emmy shares with her mother and her grandmother and her daughter and her sisters is a feeling of not being good enough in the way they look, in their physicality. Emmy learned that from watching her mother. And one day in conversation with my daughter, she was on the phone and she was saying all these things. And I'm like, Caitlin, I have never said anything like that to you. And she said, no, you haven't, Mom. I said, then why do you feel that way? And she said, because I learned that from you. It was my self-hate, my pain that I taught her to carry, because our children, feel responsible for us. And if you think about it, in society, we look at our children not so much as we used to, but it's still there as a reflection of me. When we tell a child, my mother told me repeatedly, don't tell people what you do, they'll think you're crazy. I was a kid, I didn't know what crazy was. That was her fear. Does that make sense? So what we're saying to you all is the generational curses come in this life. You're here to learn how to step into the fullness of your inner self. Step into the fullness of your God spark, your divine experience, your divinity. Because you each are the I am. You each are the creator. Just walking in a different, as Emmy's friend Wanda says, meat suit.
With Christopher's work,
That is why you are all here.
With Christopher's work, it's not just the things like you were talking about, it's also cycles of abuse that happen within families and generationally, in terms of when you start digging and going backwards, you find that, so I have sexual trauma in my past. When you start going back through the generations, you start finding it in each of the generations that have gone on. And so for him, it's about ending the cycle and healing the family line so that moving forward, those particular cycles are broken. So it's not just learned behaviors, but stopping those sorts of cycles. Same with drug use, drug addiction, things like that. Physical abuse in terms of domestic violence and what have you. So I understand what you're saying in regard to how we teach our children and what we put out in front of them and how the power of words that we put out. I'm just curious as to what they have to say in terms of the generational trauma, in terms of sexual abuse, like domestic violence, drug addiction, things like that.
It's a patterned response. Do you understand? So that generational repeating is a patterned response. It is, Ami had sexual abuse. Her mother had sexual abuse. Her grandmother had sexual abuse. Her great-grandmother had sexual abuse. Do you see? Yes. Is it repeated? But it's a pattern behavior. One of the things that we say, which does not go over well with those who are in the healing process, is what is in the past is no longer here. The past is done. Do you understand? Can you learn from the past? Absolutely. Can you bring it forward? Absolutely. So you can keep carrying it through energetically. The trauma of which you speak and what Christopher does is within the DNA structure. Again, where you focus, your body adapts to. Do you understand? Like there was a time centuries ago that tall meant 5'3". Tall now is 6'9", 7 feet. Do you see the thing? But it's the growing in the energy. God bless you, my dear. The
Thank you.
growing in the energy that is the space. And you here today, if you want to bring your past through, explore it. If you want it to continue, explore it. Do you understand what we say? But know your physicality. Know when you are having a triggered response, a patterned response, because you have the power to stop the pattern. You don't need to know what the pattern, where it started, where it began. It's interesting. History is always interesting. But each one of you has the choice of, in this moment in time, who am I going to be? Am I going to stand in my truth, or am I going to allow the manipulation to be? And the manipulation here, and we're just going to say it may not go over well, but what we're going to say is the manipulation is you have all this trauma that you were born with, and it has to be yours to carry until you can free your generation. The moment your generational trauma, the moment someone dies, they're free. It's just knowledge. It's just knowledge. It's not experience that needs to be reborn. So we're always saying to Ami, leave the past behind. We exist in this moment in time. This moment. We're no longer back here. 5 minutes ago, that's done. That's gone. Whatever came through, that is, we're into a new space of creating with each of you. And on this plane, for those who love to delve in, and there are many who love to delve into that energy, if it makes you in this time feel better and feel like the tool you need to let go of your current trauma, then follow it. Take it. Take the path. But do not allow it to keep you stuck in an energy that is not yours to carry.
So I'm curious. Thank you for that. I'm curious about where our soul reincarnates. I have two things that I've been thinking of. First of all is the number 73, that I've got these 73 incarnations. Is that on Earth for all of us? Are you tapping into the incarnations on Earth? Yeah, so anywhere in the universe. Yeah, and so I'm curious about that idea and whether we have other versions of ourselves in other places at the same time. And then I'm also curious about this idea of kind of the idea of time, that it can be a continuum, but also it's all happening at the same time. So can we, in our current moment, tap into future selves as well?
Yes.
And would
Yes.
there be any usefulness in doing things like that?
How we would answer that question is, again, if you feel that that would be something to move you through the energy of today, to know what to that voice will bring through. Is there a knowledge there that you do not have? Absolutely. Because you, in the understanding, we'll use Emmy as an example. She, at the beginning of humanity, there was a knowledge that this would come a time where one such as she would be needed. In this moment in time, one such as she. So there has been in preparation throughout the universe a collective of energies that will come through to help this transition be. Within the space of existing in multiple frequencies at one time, that is true. If you think about it, you hit a tuning fork, you have a frequency that evolves, but as it interacts with other frequencies, it shifts. Does that make sense? They come together and create.
Mm-hmm.
So what you knew in 1513 as humanity and what you know in 2080 as humanity, just to make the timeline a little more condensed, and what you know now as humanity are all vibrating at different levels of frequency. And each soul experience takes you to a new level of frequency. The interesting aspect here that many do not realize is you can shift the frequency you have been living, because the one you were born with is pure possibility. And then life comes through and diminishes that energy for many of you based on, again, experience, interpretation, and interpretation and perspective are huge because you are all pure, endless possibility. And if you allow yourself to understand that and be true in that, you can shift your space to a need of understanding that is beyond what the majority of humanity knows to be. You still have a question, my dear, so go with it.
No, I was just thinking, okay, so are we all, if we're all part of God as well, do our souls all have the same originating point? Like, did we all get created at the same time? And are some of us experiencing more lives in the same amount of time? I mean, I know it's all relative because time, who's to say how to measure it? But if Natalie's got, I don't remember how many incarnations.
727.
I mean, she's 727. I'm 73. What have I been doing with my time? Am I just a baby soul?
Emmy is 3. Emmy is 3. Emmy has 3. This is her third. So where you are, it just depends on where your soul hits in frequency. And here's the thing. When a soul leaves, you are in the space of expansion. That is what the next life is. It's to expand. And what we mean, not so much in your knowledge base, because the moment you leave, you have, once again, full access to all knowledge of what has ever been and what will be. But how you resonate in your frequency. You are in your own energy, God experiencing life as you. You're not all part of God. You are God experiencing life as you. Your soul is a pixel point of energy. But as the human incarnation of you, you are God experiencing life as Natalie, God experiencing life as Anne, Mary Elizabeth experiencing life as Mary Elizabeth. The dogs here experiencing God, experiencing life in that form. It is a constant expansion, constant expansion. Frequency that you can measure versus what is beyond your understanding. And the intertwining, the hybrid of universal energy is an absolute space of reality. Because as you said, one life could be alien-esque, as Emmy says, in energy. Another could be the rock formation you see. It's not necessarily, because all creation is life. It's not necessarily in human form.
I feel like the question I'm about to ask is going to take us in a 90-degree turn. And you've already said that Emmy doesn't generally remember the messages that come through, which I completely understand. I'm not a portal. I do channel, though. I have an oracle card reading show, and I often don't remember any of it. People ask questions in the chat afterwards or in the comments that they leave, and I can't answer them because I have no idea or no memory of what I said. I'm forever asking Anne if it was a terrible show because I don't know. Have there been any really profound messages or particularly funny messages or just things that come through that stick in your mind from readings?
I can, as my gifts expanded, I used to see the dead, and they would give me messages, but they didn't speak through me. As my gifts began to expand, they literally took over my physicality. And one of my favorite, and it's because it was a client I've seen multiple times, but her brother, who had passed away, he literally just comes in, and it's embarrassing to me because he's definitely not a woman. So the way he sits and the way he speaks are beyond my comfort level. But he's always fun to come through. But I can tell you, every single time, those who pass away, they're not worried about what we think they're going to be worried about. There is no worry. They just want you to know they're happy and they're thrilled. I was in a restaurant one day with my friend, and all of a sudden a spirit stepped in, and it was a man, and he was big, and my physicality will shift the way I hold myself, and all of a sudden he looked down and he went like this. He goes, "Look, I have boobs." Like, okay, we're in a restaurant. Don't do that. But it's, they're here just to be present. They're here not to cause us fear, not to cause us pain, but to let us know that they love us. This comes through because I'd recently put it in my book, but my cousin and his wife were murdered back in 2006. And at the funeral, I was sitting there, and all of a sudden I'm hearing giggling, and I'm like, who's giggling at the funeral, And we're in the pew, we're waiting for the priest to come up, and so I turned and looked over my shoulder, and it was my cousin and his wife, and they were waving, and they were all happy, and he's like, look how many people came to say goodbye. And then he looked at me and he said, please let my family know the man will be caught within a week. And then he was gone. So that was the message I was asked to deliver. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't, because that was before I was still under the guise of they'll all think you're crazy. But I shared the message with my daughter and my husband at the time, and They agreed, don't tell anybody, they'll think you're nuts. But within a week, the man who murdered them was caught. So it was imperative for them to know, because they worried nobody would ever find them and there would be no justice. So the dead come through to help us, but sometimes they just come through because they see the opportunity to step in. Again, I'm a portal, so they step into me and take over my physicality. A channel moves you aside to take over the physicality. And the reason I don't remember a lot is simply we is in the moment. So when they speak, I'm in the moment too. So when the next moment comes, it's like, people always say to me, remember when you said no? Unless they allow me to, where they bring it through, I have no memory.
I will say, after my mum passed, there was a period of time where she would come through a lot and there were no messages. This was not the owls coming through. She just messed with me to the point that I would wake up in the middle of the night and the TV downstairs would be on at full volume, at a volume that I never watched the TV at. So it wasn't even a case of the TV just turning itself back on. It was on and the volume was up, all of this. And there was a night where I went to the bathroom and living on my own, I never closed doors, and I'm peeing and I can feel something black above my head. And I think, oh my goodness, it's a spider. I'm terrified of spiders. Living on your own, that's not a good thing in the middle of the night. And no, the manhole was open. And so then I'm thinking there's someone in my ceiling and I'm moving around trying to close it. I've got a knife and I'm trying to be discreet in case somebody tries to grab me. I woke up one morning and it felt like somebody had been sleeping on the other side of the bed because it was just slightly warm. And I thought, well, it's just me. I don't understand. And then I moved over and I went, the whole side of the bed is warm. The electric blanket had been turned on. I had not slept on that side of the bed that night. You could see that the bed was undisturbed. And I called someone who was actually a friend of my mum and I said, I need you to come and clear the house. I don't know what's going on, but there are things taking place. Oh, the other thing she liked to do, I've always had trouble falling asleep. As I'm drifting off to sleep and I'm in that beautiful state where I'm just about to go, but I'm not quite conscious, but I'm aware of what's going on. My bedroom light turns on. The switch is on the other side of the room. And I called this woman and she said, Nat, I'm not coming to clear the house. And I said, well, why not? She goes, because it's your mother. And I said, well, why is she doing this? And she said, she thinks it's funny. I said, okay, well, she needs to stop. And she said, she's laughing. I went, all right, great joke. I unplugged and took the electric blankets off my bed because I thought this could start a fire. The rest of it did actually stop. And now when she comes through, it's different. It's more civilized. But man, she liked to mess with me for a good 3 months.
Yeah. And they will. Go ahead.
I was just going to say they have a sense of humor, or at least my mother does, or thinks she does.
Yeah. And your mother did in life. She had a sense of humor.
Yes.
She thought she was very funny. So the energy they bring through when you leave this earthly realm and transition into your soul's journey, continuing, there are steps you have to go through to learn. One of the things, and Emmy always says, thank God. When somebody passes, not everyone comes back through to speak, because if that were the case, Emmy would be inundated with the dead all the time. But those who do, it's part of their soul's expansion at that time. Because to go from the expanse of a soul back into a human experience takes a level of energetic control to be able to speak to a medium, to be able to channel through another, to be able to move things. And your mother was playing because she found she could do it. When my dad passed away, it was, he used to come, him and my mom came through every day for 5 years to speak to my daughter. Not me, but my daughter. Every single day. And she'd speak through me. My dad came through and he was just excited. 3 months after his passing, suddenly he was standing at my work, and Dance with My Father again came on the radio, and I saw him out of the corner of my eye. And then he just smiled and reached out to me like, let's dance. But so they're in a process of learning. My friend's husband passed away, and he would come through and he's like, no, I got things to do. I've got stuff to do. I got things to learn. So he doesn't come through the way he used to. Each step of the journey is part of the soul's learning. Like I have an aunt who has never come through, ever, my whole life. And when I asked, how come I haven't heard from her? And they said, because she has ascended completely. Her soul, individualized soul's journey are done. But others, they're learning. My dad came through. I had a friend, and when he came through, he stepped into me and he turned and he looked at her, and all of a sudden he was so excited. In another lifetime, she was the love of his life. And boy, was I insulted, because when he'd come through then, he didn't want to talk to me. He wanted to talk to her. Because that soul connection. So we are all here in that soul's journey together, but each soul that leaves is in a process of expanding. And being able to speak through another is a step in that ascension journey. Being able to take the physicality. People who initially can't speak, can't figure out how to use my voice, they show me how they died, which is not a fun experience many times. Like I'll feel a heart attack. One guy hung himself, so my neck snapped. You know, it's part of that soul's journey to manipulate the energy on the earthly plane.
I just have to say one more thing, Anne. Sorry, I know I've kind of taken over these last few questions. But I need to thank you for that whole explanation, because my grandfather, my dad's dad, when he was passing, and he always said at 79, he said, at 80, I don't want to be alive. I'm done. That is, to me, that's when you go. And he didn't pass at 80. He passed at about 82. But the last 2 years of his life, he was very, very unwell. There was a moment about a year before he passed, I got a phone call saying he's been rushed to hospital. The person who called me is very dramatic, enjoy sharing bad news. So it was, he's going to die. And I left. I was in rehearsals for a fashion parade. I left to go and be with my grandfather and make sure I had some time with him. And it was just he and I in this hospital room, and we shared several very, very special moments that I'm very grateful for. But in that moment, something happened, and he burst into tears and he said, I'm ready to go. And then I burst into tears and said, but we're not ready for you to go. I love you and I want you to be here. And so we had a very honest conversation about where we were both at. And it was a very cathartic conversation. I knew when I left the room that day that it didn't matter when he passed, we had said everything we needed to say. But one of the things that I said to him was, I need you to promise me when you get over there, you will come and visit me. And he looked at me, and he had a very thick Polish accent, and he said, there is nothing there. It's just black. And I laughed through my tears, and I said, oh, you're in for a surprise. And he sort of shook his head, and I said, I promise you, you're in for a surprise. So when you get there, can you please just come and visit me and let me know you're okay? And I get a lot of visits, my animals more so than humans, but dreams seem to be the easiest way for most of them to come to me. I saw my uncle the day after he passed, and I described the entire scene to my mum, and I said, did he fish? Did he do this? Did he do that? And Mum's like, I don't know. We went to their house the next day, and there was a photo tucked in a corner that I'd never seen, and it was the image of what I saw in the visit the night before. So I knew I had that ability that for people to come through and have this avenue. And 6 months after he passed, he came through and let me know he was okay. And it was a very brief visit. We were in my grandmother's kitchen dining area, and we were speaking telepathically. He told me he was good. I hugged him. I could smell him. And it was the healthy version of him, not the unwell version. And I've never seen him again. But he honored that request, but he has never, ever come through. And I've always wondered why, because I thought you figured out that you could come through, but you've never come back. So your explanation is, it just gives me a lot of comfort knowing that he's just on his journey and doing his thing.
Yeah, he's doing his thing. And one of the things that you'll find is a lot of people think that the dead is here, they come through for us. And that's not true. It's all about me. It really is. It's their soul's journey. So if that's in their requirement, they will show up. Does that make sense to say?
Yes.
But many, they've already been to that level in their previous lifetime. So they don't need to revisit. And others, based on the soul connection, and that's one of the things I see, Natalie, with you, is your grandfather and you had a soul connection at a time of war, is what is coming through here. And that soul connection, he felt the need to truly honor you. But there is also in the space of expanding energy, what most people don't realize. When people say you can choose to stay longer or you can choose to leave earlier. Nope. We all come with an expiration date. And it's not like milk that maybe it comes a couple days early because it's gone bad, or cookies, you can eat them after they're expired. Of course, I know that, but your expiration date is your expiration date, because we are here specifically for the whole of humanity. We is always saying life is all about me and how I positively affect the we. And that is true in whether it's a human experience or a soul's experience. It's all about me. So the dead aren't coming through to help us. We just get the benefit feeling helped by their presence. Because a lot of times it's just like, look at me. I can't tell you how many times the dead come through and say, yeah, I'm younger than you. It's like when somebody dies old, they are so excited that they are young again. That is, I'm younger than you. Of course, I'm at that age where that's very possible. But it's just in that space of understanding that the dead come through because we are familiar for them. And there is still that soul connection. But they are not here because we need them. I had one woman in a reading who said to me, and that just popped up, so I'm going to bring it through. She was positive I was lying because her mother and her were involved in a fight with her sister that continued after her mother's death. And the mother told her, let it go. Well, she was positive it wasn't her mother. My mother hated her. No, the soul has absolute understanding. So what we hold in the area of judgment and resentment and fear here is completely released. And there's an absolute understanding why each and every person harmed us or what came from it. So there is nothing but peace. But in the moments of our passing, it is 100% perfectly timed. whether it's in utero or we're 125. It is 100% perfectly timed. And there are many of us here who are living who don't want to be, who are tired, who are done. But in their presence, and here's an interesting aspect, my dear. Your grandfather wanted to leave, but his presence that day gave you a gift that you will hold through the rest of your life's journey.
Absolutely.
And your impact on another is as equally as important as your impact on the whole of humanity.
Yeah. I've often believed that, and I have memories of when my grandmother, she'd had a stroke and she was at the end of her life, and we'd go to visit her, and I would bring my daughter with her, and it was actually really magical to see how they connected when my daughter was very young and not at the level of having a lot of language. They really connected just through gestures and smiling, and she just loved watching my daughter. And around that time, I had a friend also I don't know if she just had a parent who'd had a stroke or something, but she shared her view of sort of like, well, if I was at that stage, I'd want to just go. Like, there's no purpose to be here at that point. Thinking of it from the perspective of just, if I can't be moving around like I want to, I wouldn't want to be here, is how she felt. But when I interacted with my grandmother, I really saw so much about, even just to see the generational conversations happening with her and my daughter. There's still so much that we're learning, but I was thinking of it from the perspective of, she's still there. And for someone to look at her and think because she can't speak in the same way that she's not there, I kept thinking that's such a limited understanding, because to me, she was there still. She was still the same person. She just wasn't talking. So I don't know why I wanted to share that. It's just like to punctuate the whole thing of life is valuable all up and down the time that we're here.
Every moment is purposeful and intended. And that's hard for people to see when their circumstances are difficult. Why is God doing this to me? It's part of your journey. It's part of the expanding of all of humanity. And when you can allow yourself to move through it, what happens to so many is you get stuck in it. You get stuck in the moment that, why is this happening? Oh, this is horrible. This is horrible. But with each breath, you have the opportunity for new. And as you spoke through of your grandmother, Mary Elizabeth's mother had a stroke 5 weeks before she passed away. And interestingly, when they would walk in the room, she couldn't communicate. She was paralyzed on half her body, but she was watching all this activity in the room that had nothing to do with the humans there. But she would she had a crooked smile after that. So one side would go up because she was paying attention to that level of communication. And in part, for that illness that she had, it brought her to a different level of understanding in the earthly form, how souls interact still here on this plane. And with each and every one of you, you can have a positive or negative impact, but they're equally important because this is a space of duality. And you need both faith and fear. You need both light and dark. And eventually, there will always be that duality. The one day Jeffrey Dahmer came through to speak to Emmy and her friends. Well, let us just say he wasn't well received initially. And the energy, Emmy had no choice. He was here. He was going to speak. But he said, even that was my purpose. I was that anchor of darkness. But because of what I did, different programs and different awarenesses came into place that have saved many since his passing. So we never know what our impact will be, but it's always significant. So with each breath we have, even when we're suffering, it's still a gift. It's still a gift.
I don't know if either of you have read this book, but there's a book called The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. And I don't know if it was Nicholas Sparks or Maury. I can't think of his name, but it's, I picked up this book. I think at the time I had nothing else to read and it was sitting there and I went, oh, this will be an easy read. It'll fill in a day or two and then I'll move on. I think I read it in one sitting and it was so profound to me because as this guy goes through these meetings with these people, I think most of them he doesn't remember, but they explain the impact that this person had on their lives. And it was so profound. And there are frequently moments where, especially when I run into people, and we all have these moments where someone walks up, Anne, how are you? Mary Elizabeth, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. And they talk to you and you think they know me. They actually know me. They're asking questions. I've clearly had conversations with them and I have no memory of who they are. And so I try and respond and ask questions that will trigger something for me. But it's part of why when I move through the world, if I don't remember someone, rather than be like, I'm sorry, who are you? I try to do things in a very gentle way so that they still feel seen and heard, because you don't understand the impact that you are having on people in every moment as we move through. That was just the thought that popped into my head that I thought I should share. So if anybody's interested, go look up that book and read it. It's definitely worth reading.
Well, one of the things when you speak, we never know the impact we have on another individual. We never know. When we snap at somebody, we never know. When we're kind, when we open that door, people always say, oh, why do I have to hold the door? Holding the door for somebody is just acknowledging that you see them. There was a moment where I was in a store and the owner of the store walked up to me and all of a sudden this energy walked through and stepped in and started thanking them. And he was like, I don't have no clue. And I said, this comes from your childhood. And he's like, I don't know who this is. And it turned out it was simply from his childhood. And they said enough to trigger the memory for him. But from his childhood, he would have been 11 or 12. And this person who had passed was like 6. And he was at a park with his sister, but he was severely disabled. And all these children were playing with the water coming out. And when he tried to go up there, the children were mean to him, the other children. And this boy came over and said, here, you come with me. So he let him play with him very briefly because he couldn't stand for a long period of time. But that person came through with that story. And then he went, oh my God, I remember that. He said, I was at an art program and the park had water things. And there was a little kid who was crying because nobody would let him come on. He said, so I let him come on. But it's the heart connections that we make here that ensure that soul connection continues through.
I just need to say, I looked it up while you were talking. So it's Mitch. I'm going to try and hold this straight.
Mitch album, yeah.
Yes. So just for anyone that's interested.
It is a great book.
That's an amazing story. I love that because, I'm always all about trying to be present with people when we come in touch with them, right? That's while I was a professor, which I'm not going to go to for the first time in the fall. I won't be being a professor, but to me, that was the most important part of my job, was just being in the moment with my students. Because especially I feel like for younger people, and if you're probably in your 20s or even teens, I think everybody has a hunger for connection, and everyone feels like they're connected because they've got the social media, but there's nothing like the presence of another person acknowledging who you are, and even a person that isn't connected to your social media, just being acknowledged by somebody who's outside of your normal group. It really matters. And we've been so conditioned, or I feel like there's this effort to try to disconnect us, to keep us disconnected from that. So that's why I feel like it's so important for all of us to do those things, to, I don't know, to read the book, 5 People You Meet in Heaven. Is that part of it? I haven't read it, so I don't know, but I think it's just so important.
I also think just for...
Go ahead.
No, please, you go ahead. Okay, so I was just going to say, I think the other thing, Anne, is is every single person that you ever speak to talks about the 1 or 2 teachers that had the most impact on them. And I don't care who you are, how good or bad you were at school, there are certain teachers that lessons that they taught, not necessarily the academic lessons, but lessons in life, lessons in humanity, lessons in compassion that stick with them. I've got a short list of teachers that were very impactful on me. And I think as a professor, I'm sure that you have had those impacts on a number of your students. And I think that's an incredibly special thing to have and to carry.
Yeah. And also, Natalie, you as well, when you've done things even such as being on The Bachelor, you connected with the people on the show, but with so many people who watched you as well. All of those sorts of things really matter whenever we're in the moment and treat somebody as a person we see. It's so important. And I love the story of the young boy coming forward to tell the guy thank you for something he didn't even remember in that moment. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. And the interesting aspect as you speak, Natalie, when you say people come up to you and you have no clue who they are, that happens to me all the time. But I have a little gift because I recognize the energy. Okay, I know them. I just have no clue from where. But the fact that you come still from a place of kindness, they're coming up to you because you touched their heart. You touch their heart. Unless they're asking you for an autograph, you touched their heart. They connected with you on a heart level. And that is what we're all here to do. We're all here to love each other through, so to speak. We are all here to share our kindness and our integrity. And it does not matter if we don't remember someone, as long as we are responding still from that space of kindness and acceptance of another, they will never know. You have no clue who they are. Mm-hmm. Never. Because you still love them through. And that is what we're all here to do. And that's where we need to be in society, is to remind ourselves that we are each 100% different than the person next to us in the room. But we all deserve to be seen. And when you share the way you do and you're present, you do that exactly, both of you, beautifully.
I'm curious as to your thoughts. Everybody talks about, especially since 2020, about there being a mass awakening. And there certainly has been a shift in the language that people use in regard to spirituality and how they talk about approaching life. And depends on who you speak to as to whether people say there is a mass awakening happening and it's going to absolutely shift humanity. And then there are other people that sort of say, like it's happening, but it's not happening fast enough. do you feel that there is a mass awakening, and will it just keep growing in strength and how quickly it's evolving?
There is an acceleration in the timeline because of where you are in humanity. There is an acceleration energetically, that mass awakening. If you think about the pandemic, many, many, many people were on their own. What did they do with their time? They spent it in their own energy. And to awaken, you need to connect to that inner self. You need to be aware of what you are feeling. There are still those who don't connect with others, who don't believe in spiritual things. Well, spiritual journeys are about connecting to your inner self, knowing yourself. And when you get to that space energetically of expanding, it's not coincidence. So many are feeling it because it's intentional. It was created that way. As we said, Emmy is coming through now with what she does and what will come through before the end of 2025, that we'll see the presence alive. And in that, that's the key. But will everybody get there at the same time? No. Will everybody move through this lifetime into the next level of frequency or the next dimensional energy? Let's put it that way. No, they won't. Some will stay 3D, some will be 5D, some will accelerate into 8 to 12. Do you understand what we mean? So in that energy field, it's all intentional. The funny thing about human beings that we find humorous is you all believe you are in charge. You all believe you are taking the reins. You were created specifically for your space, your time. The only choice you get to make, odd as it sounds, is who will I be in this moment in time? Will I choose to live in my natural state, which is kindness and integrity? Or will I choose to allow manipulation to be? Telling that small lie, putting a false front for others to see, hiding your truth. Fear energy, and we just will put that out there, even though humans hate that word fear. Nobody wants to be known as in fear energy. It just simply means false evidence altering reality. Fear energy, which is that space of manipulation, and you see it in your current political climate in the world right now. You're seeing this manipulation coming through, and that leading with fear. Watch your media screens. That leading with fear, in that energy, some will stay because they see no need to accept others equally. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And today, what is most amazing for all of you, that is the only choice you need to make. And he always jokes, well, what about the color of my underwear? Believe it or not, that's predestined too. Each and every decision that you think you are making is not true. Your choice, your only choice, is where will I be in my energy? Will I be in faith, which is kindness and integrity, and understanding all are equal to me? Or will I be in fear, which is manipulation and lie, which falls under anger? Control. Go ahead. You've all heard that expression. When humans make a plan, God laughs. Very true. Because the plan is already here.
Wow. I feel like you already started answering some of the questions that we ask every every guest on our show. And I think maybe, are we to the point where we should start the questions, Natalie?
Yes, I think we should.
All right. Yeah. So the first question I get to ask this time, and this is, and so also, I don't know, maybe we're asking both me and we, whoever wants to answer. The first one is, what makes you laugh?
Babies. That's me. What makes me laugh? Babies. We already told you, when humans make plan.
Right. I love that.
I think this one's more for me than we, because I don't know. You can tell us, who was your biggest spiritual influence?
Okay. My experience, God. God is my. I was never a seeker of knowledge. I knew none of this stuff. The only thing I was aware of, dead people were everywhere. But I don't read spiritual knowledge. I don't watch spiritual podcasts. I've never done that. And part of that was, so I'm told, so that I can't be, the message is pure. I'm not polluted, so to speak. Not that it's pollution, but my thoughts aren't guided by what others believe. It's just what is coming through that I know to be true. And so my biggest spiritual teacher was that divine connection within. I grew up Catholic. My husband died. All hell broke loose. All heaven opened. And I've just been walking this path, learning as I move. And if I've always believed, always my whole life, that if I needed to know something, the answer would come to me. And it always does. So if a teacher comes in my path, interestingly, when my gifts started to expand and the dead started coming through, and I committed to always give the message, it was the time that Teresa Caputo was coming on air as the Long Island medium. And as she described her experience, and I'd watch her, she was experiencing what I was experiencing too. When the dead would come in, she'd be talking, and all of a sudden she couldn't speak. She was, So I just took her words, which were, I connect to those that have passed on, and they have a message for you. I know it sounds a little weird. She would say those things, so that's what I did, because I'm like, how do I approach a stranger in that level? So for me, she was an example of how to communicate, but the teachers, have I seen others? Yes, but I only see what I'm drawn to. I don't search. Like for a while, Neville Goddard recentered me at the beginning of the summer because I was going off on a fear energy. So his teachings recentered me. But other than that, it's always that knowing that I have a purpose here.
All right. So the next question you've already started to answer is, what would be your advice to people on how to transcend fear?
Fred. when that first came through, the idea of Fred literally initially to me was fear, reaction, energy, default. Okay. When my head would go into the spin, your first key to overcome fear is be aware. Be aware that you're in it. When your body starts to ache, when you start to tense, literally your body is telling you something, you're not in alignment. Pay attention to that. When you get stuck in the spin of your thoughts, pay attention to that, because it's like, okay, I can do this. I can create a podcast. And then my head goes, no, you can't. You don't know anything about technology. You don't know. You can't do. Who's going to follow you? Blah, 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 blah. Well, that was Fred. We told me who was mean to you when you were young. And it was a guy named Fred. So that's literally how that energy got named Fred. But then about a year in, we said, we see Fred as fear, reaction, energy denied. And what you need to do is when Fred comes through, excuse my language, but they said, say, shut the F up, Fred. So interestingly, I live with my best friend, and for a while, you'll hear from my room, shut the fuck up, Fred. You'll hear from her room, shut the fuck up, Fred, because we're in the spin. So that brought us to that awareness. As I was writing, as I said to you, as I was writing my book and I got to chapter, I think it's 30, suddenly they said to me, Fred is here to help you. And I went, I always thought of Fred as the enemy. He was telling me why I couldn't do things. And then as I was writing, something came through and it was, you're almost there. You've got that. And it was the same exact voice. And I went, Fred? Like, I'm used to Fred berating me. But what I learned was that voice in our head responds from our own perspective. When I was telling my daughter this, she said, Mom, Fred doesn't berate me all the time, only sometimes. And I went, oh. So I had the habit of beating myself up in most areas of my life, where Fred is just here to illuminate a space to change. So once you start in the awareness is key. And then allow yourself to focus, where is that coming from? And here's the thing. You mentioned, Natalie, that you're a manifester. And my head goes, ooh, I wish that were me. But again, what did I just do? I took it away from myself, right? So the one day I was saying, I live in 100% financial freedom. And immediately I felt happy. And then immediately I heard why that couldn't be. The emotion was happy. The words were a belief that was being highlighted by Fred. This is what you believe. And I realized I have no problem with money. I have a fear of being happy. So we have to examine, what is it we really fear? What is being highlighted here? And the key to that is identify the emotion that comes through and then allow the feelings to guide you to see that it's the emotion that brings the feeling. So happy, most people would think most people want to be happy. My experience was the moment I'm happy, I get slapped down. And that's my whole life. So it was like, oh, but now since that, when I have happy, I feel happy because I identified the opportunity to let go. And that's how you shift generational energy.
And the final one of these questions, what's the best piece of spiritual advice you've ever been given?
Trust yourself above all else. Trust yourself.
So we are going to wrap it up and let you go, but I just wanted to check in with you before we do that. What is the best place for people to find, because you're an author, where can they find your books? How can they connect with you? I will put all the links in the comments below, but just so that people know where to find you.
Okay. People can, I'll just show you my book. Connecting to the Light Within. It's available on Amazon. The other one isn't out yet because I just finished it yesterday. The You can find me on Instagram at @MaryElizabeth_When God Speaks. You can find me on YouTube, Mary Elizabeth When God Speaks, at I am Mary Elizabeth 3333. That's 4 3s. Or you can find me on Facebook at Mary Elizabeth Radecki, Radecki. And my website, sorry, my roommate's going, website. My website is I am Mary Elizabeth, www.IamMaryElizabeth.me.
And what sort of services do you offer people as well? I noticed you've got some intuitive coaching groups and other things.
I do one-on-one coaching. I do group coaching. I do individual sessions, readings. I still do some medium work when that is a necessity, but I never promise that's what'll come through, because it's whatever the person in front of me needs most, not necessarily what they want to be.
Mm.
And there will be, and then before the end of the year, there will be a whole new series of classes on conquering fear. So that was perfect question.
Yeah, great.
I wanted to say, it's like we can hear the we talking to you.
The roommate we.
Yes. Well,
Yeah,
Mary Elizabeth,
she's telling me.
Mary Elizabeth, and we thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to speak to us. This has been a perfect way to end the week, at least for me. And as always, Anne, thank you so much for doing this with me. I love exploring all of these topics.
Thank you so much.
Ladies, I appreciate you, and we do too. And we understand that in 2026, there will be an expansion of energy, and you will shift into a new space of connection, not just within you, but in how you interact with the community. What we will say to you is be open to the new, because it's different than you currently conceive.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Bye.
you.